Hi again, unlicensed thinkers. Today I wanted to talk about subconscious biases that we have and how we can start to recognize them in ourselves. I think the best way to recognize them in ourselves is to first start seeing them honestly in other people. And really it comes down to follow the money. But not just the money, it also has to do with the health, the well-being. Essentially what we're talking about is the feeling of safety that someone has for themselves or their loved ones. And that's going to be the fuel for a lot of these subconscious biases, because that's what our brain is made to do, so to speak. So that's what keeps us safe. That's what keeps us reproducing. That's what keeps our offspring healthy, and so they can survive and they can have more offspring, is all of these biases that we have. But they don't always serve us very well. They just kind of seem to at the moment. But let's go ahead and jump in there. So when you're watching the Discovery Channel, you see a lion chasing a gazelle. Now, who is the good guy and who is the bad guy? So the lion needs to eat. So if the gazelle gets away, then the lion doesn't get to eat. But if the gazelle doesn't get away, then the lion kills the gazelle. But the lion gets to eat and he gets to feed his kids or her kids, whatever. If the gazelle gets away, then they get to reproduce more. So who is it that's the good guy and who's the bad guy? So that gazelle is preventing those lion cubs from getting food if it runs away. So should it just stand there? So these are all some really weird questions, right? There's no good answer to that. I mean, neither one is evil. They're just sort of doing the things that they do. But in the human world, we end up with a lot more biases, and we need to justify this good and this evil for ourselves. So I'm going to go through a few examples here that'll help you see what these biases are and how they can affect the way that people act, which may not be in what they would consider their own best interest. So let's start with medical professionals. Love my medical professionals. My family is medical professionals. But there is a weird thing that happens in the medical profession. So when you have a doctor and you go to this doctor, you have something wrong with you, they can give you a pill that cures you right now, which they often do. I don't think poor of, or ill, I should say, of medical professionals. I just want to make sure that's very clear. So they can give you a pill that will make you better right now. They can not give you a pill and let you get better on your own, or they can treat your illness or whatever it is long term. And so there's more money in it for them to treat your illness long term than there is for them to do either of the other options. And so they want to help you. They're good people. Like I said, I know medical professionals. They are indeed good people. They have this desire to help. But we have to remember what we have is these subconscious biases, and these control us from the background. So if I'm a doctor, there is a chance that I'm going to justify the long-term treatment over the pill that fixes you right now. For whatever reason I can come up with in my medical term-laced brain, I can find a way that makes that the better option. It's not necessarily the better option, but to my subconscious mind that wants to take care of me, it's going to feed me that bias of that long-term care, because it knows that more money is going to come into me and my family and my hospital, my practice, whatever it might be. And the same thing happens with therapists. So a therapist goes into their job because they want to help people. Absolutely admirable. But they also need to feed their family. They also need to pay their rent or their mortgage. And so if I'm a therapist, I'm going to have a bias towards my subconscious is going to steer me towards this more long-term and involved care to fix my patient's problem, as opposed to doing something that could help them immediately. And again, I love therapists. You guys do great work. Don't yell at me. You really do. You do great work. I think it's for the best. But there is that bias there where sometimes the route that's taken is the longer route because that subconscious bias says, I need to pay my bills, as opposed to the conscious mind, which is saying, I need to help this patient. So there's a conflict there. And so a lot of times that is always going to go towards that bias. But let's get away from medical professionals. I beat up on you enough. Like I said, I love you guys. My family is medical professionals. I know you guys have big hearts and you work hard. Let's look at like a little bit more political. I've been looking at it, and I think that the media actually has a subconscious bias. And I know the media and they're subconscious, but hear me out. I think they actually have a subconscious bias for Trump to win, even though they seem anti-Trump. And the reason I see for that is because they have this subconscious bias that says if Trump loses, they aren't going to make as much money, because right now it's a real easy game. They can really hype up people on the left and get them to think that the devil is running the country or whatever other crazy thing. And they can show certain information, hide information. Yes, I know all sides do that. I'm just talking specifically about this. Don't need to get upset. So for them, there's a lot more money to be made long term if Trump stays in office, because they have all of these people on the left that are watching their news and saying, oh my God, what's he going to do next? How horrible is it going to be? What is he going to say? Oh my God. And so they are glued to this ad machine that is the media. And they're making a ton of money for people because of their fear. So the media has this bias towards making people afraid, keeping someone in office that they've already, shall we say, built up to be this horrible demon. And so they don't have to build a new demon. They can just keep using the same demon. And so they have this subconscious bias where I think they are actually, in a lot of ways, pushing people towards voting for Trump, but they don't want to push too many people because then they lose their audience. So it just something to consider when you're watching the news and about any candidate. Just again, right now, the election and Trump getting reelected is the big thing. So that's what I'm going to talk about. More political, we can also talk about the way that people vote. So what do people vote for? Well, back in the old days, it used to be you had to be a landowner, or some ideas like in Starship Troopers, you have to serve in the military or at least in some civil capacity in order to get your voting rights. And that's because they want to make sure that you have an absolute stake in the game. You have earned that right. You say, I love this country, so I'm going to vote in the best interests of this country. And you do that through your service. And so if you don't do that, if you don't have a stake in it, if you don't have land, or you haven't, done something to earn that right, then you don't really have the same the same stake in it, the same vested interest in it. And so your bias is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be real easy for your subconscious biases to push you towards voting for other people to have to give more of their money away. Things like that, because you say, well, you justify it. So you say, well, I think we should take more care of people. I think we should be nicer to people. I think, these people should pay more. Well, as soon as you become one of these people, you don't want to pay more. See how that works? So it's not really a fair kind of thing. You're doing it through a bias, and your bias is, I want more of that person's money. And I know, go ahead and get mad at me for that one. That's just what I think. I don't care on that one. So we need to consider these biases that we have, whether we like them or we like to admit them, because admitting to them feels like crap. Your ego, it fears change. It fears admitting that it was wrong. It fears admitting that it was at fault. And so we will do all these justifications, all of these crazy mental gymnastics in order to avoid saying, I was wrong, I was at fault, I did a bad thing, all of that. We do anything to avoid that. It's absolutely crazy. You can see all kinds of, if you go and look up psychological experiments on YouTube, you can find all kinds of stuff relating to how people react around authority, how people act when in right versus wrong situations, and ego attachment situations, things like that. So we come up with all these crazy justifications and to feed that bias that we have. So our subconscious says, here's our bias. We have this bias because it's what's going to provide us with the most benefit. And then our brain, our conscious mind, comes up with all of these ways to justify it and say, oh no, absolutely, that's the right thing to do. It might be completely insane. It might not make any real sense what the brain comes up with, but it does it because that is, evolutionary speaking or adaptation speaking, that is the way to get you to survive for the most amount of time, is for you to get the most resources, for you to have the most access to sexual activity, whatever it might be. You need to have access to all of these things in order for your genes to go on. And because of the way that whole process works, those with the genes that say do these important things in order to reproduce are the ones who are going to reproduce more. So the ones that don't have that are going to reproduce less. And so it all sounds like, well, it's all a downhill thing, but it's not really. It keeps us alive. It caused us to get to the point that we are now with these big brains that gaslight us all the time and all that kind of stuff. So consider that. All of the things that you do, you don't want to lose friends or status, just like the media doesn't want to lose ad revenue. So there's always some kind of a payoff. There's follow the money kind of an idea, but money might mean a different thing. Money might mean, like I said, friends or status. Money might mean this ego-fearing change. Money might mean actual money in the form of ad dollars. Money might mean your clients come back to you more often than if you were to send them away with something that helped them immediately. And so these subconscious biases will always try to push you in that direction. So now I said I was going to talk about how to see your own subconscious biases. Well, think in those terms. Think in those terms for yourself. And this can be a little bit hard to do, but think about, why do I do that? What is the benefit for me? What is my real motivation? What is my motivation when it comes to my survival, the survival of my offspring? What is driving me to do this? And when you think about that for the things that you do, you will come up with the answer. You will come up with a real answer. Again, your brain is going to try to trick you and justify, but when you really, if you just keep thinking, keep going past that, say, what is the root of this? How does this relate to my survival? So, like, if we go back to the example of voting, so you want to vote to take care of poor people, right? So don't stop there, because that's not a real answer. That sounds altruistic, but I've covered this in other videos. We are absolutely not altruistic. So we can just X that one out. It's not because you're altruistic and you so much care about that. You want to do that because you are afraid that if you become poor, that you won't have anyone taking care of you. And so you want that safety net. Sounds good. Why not, right? Well, just consider that. Consider that you're not actually doing it for altruistic reasons. You are doing it for reasons that are more involved with taking care of yourself. So think about that. Think about the way you vote. The way, there's the phrase nowadays, virtue signaling and stuff like that, and cancel culture and all of those kind of things. Think about why you are involved in those behaviors, and think about why you might do something at your job that doesn't exactly fit your morals. And you'll be able to relate it back to your survival, and you'll be able to see that your subconscious mind is justifying why I fleeced this dude over here on this car that I was selling him. And That's against my morals, but why did I justify it? So you'll start to be able to see things like that. And when you start to be able to see your own motivations, you won't necessarily change what you do, but you'll at least be able to understand and accept what you do, and hopefully direct things in a way that keeps you more morally aligned and morally consistent. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Be sure to hit the like button and share the video.